Imagine a move so bold it shakes the foundations of global trade, grabbing headlines and stirring controversy from Washington to Beijing. Yet, beneath the storm of tariffs and trade wars, there's a deeper strategy at play, one that few people are talking about. This isn't just about taxes on imports or the back and forth over steel and aluminum. It's about a calculated distraction, a smokescreen masking a far more ambitious plan shaping America's future in ways that could ripple through the global economy for decades. When tariffs were first slapped on Chinese goods and other imports, it seemed like a blunt tool wielded by a leader fighting to protect American jobs and industries. The headlines roared with stories of factories saved, retaliations, and rising prices on everyday goods. But what if this narrative was just the surface? What if the tariffs were never meant to be the final solution, but rather a way to reshape the playing field, disrupt old alliances, and pave the way for a new kind of economic dominance? The story goes beyond the numbers slapped on containers crossing the ocean. It delves into technology control, supply chain re-engineering, and geopolitical repositioning. Behind the tariff headlines lies a strategy to force America's hand in the global race for technological supremacy. The administration recognized early that tariffs alone wouldn't bring manufacturing back or rewrite decades of economic interdependence. Instead, they created a context where companies and foreign governments had to reconsider their dependencies on China and other competitors. The tariffs became a bargaining chip, a way to drive changes in trade agreements, push for intellectual property protections, and shift investments toward domestic innovation hubs. It's less about punishment and more about pressure, less about immediate gain and more about long-term leverage. As these trade tensions simmered, the real game began with aggressive policies aimed at securing critical supply chains, semiconductors, rare earth minerals, and cutting-edge AI technologies. These are the building blocks of the 21st century economy, and controlling them means controlling the future. Efforts to curb China's access to these resources, combined with investments in American R&D and infrastructure, signal a pivot from reactive trade policies to proactive economic strategy. This transition is not obvious if you're only watching tariffs rise and fall. It requires looking at investment patterns, government funding, and international alliances in a new light. What's more, this approach aims to recalibrate global power balances by incentivizing allies to reduce reliance on China. Through new trade deals, strategic partnerships, and security collaborations, the goal is to create a network of trusted partners who share technology standards and economic goals. This is a subtle, long game, designed to contain rival powers without direct confrontation, using economics as a tool of diplomacy and influence. It's a chess match on the global stage with tariffs as the opening move, but far from the endgame. At the same time, the domestic political landscape plays a crucial role. The tariff rhetoric energizes a base concerned about job losses and economic nationalism, while the behind-the-scenes policies work to rebuild American competitiveness. This dual approach allows for public-facing toughness, while quietly steering the country toward innovation-led growth. It also complicates narratives in the media and among political opponents, because the true objectives aren't always visible or easily communicated. The tariffs distract attention from these subtler moves, which require patience and strategic foresight. Given all this, it becomes clear that the tariffs were never just about trade deficits or punishing unfair practices. They were a deliberate distraction, a headline-grabbing tactic to buy time and space for a comprehensive overhaul of America's economic and technological posture. The real plan involves investing in future industries, safeguarding critical technologies, and reshaping alliances to prepare the U.S. for a world where economic power increasingly equals geopolitical power. If you think about it, this strategy raises bigger questions about what it means to be a superpower in the modern era. It's no longer enough to have a large military or a vast market. The future belongs to those who can control innovation and secure supply chains. How does a country shift from being a manufacturing powerhouse to a technology leader? How do tariffs fit into this complex puzzle? And what are the risks of this approach for global cooperation and economic stability? Understanding this hidden agenda behind the tariffs sheds light on recent policy moves and provides context for the ongoing economic tensions we see today. It's a story of power, economics, and strategy, unfolding in real time. And it's one that affects every consumer, worker, and business, whether they realize it or not. If you're interested in seeing how this plays out in specific industries or what it means for future trade relations, stay tuned. There's much more to uncover about the shifting global landscape and the real impact these moves will have on your everyday life. Now, if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to the channel. We dive deep into topics like this every week, breaking down complex strategies into clear insights. And don't be shy, drop your thoughts in the comments. Imagine a moment when the world's attention is fixed on tariffs, trade wars, and economic posturing. The headlines scream about tariffs on steel, aluminum, and Chinese goods. Governments respond with countermeasures, and businesses brace for impact. Yet beneath this cacophony of economic noise, there's a much deeper game unfolding, one that few people fully grasp. While the Trump administration's tariff announcements dominated the news cycle and stirred fierce debate, the truth is that these tariffs were more than just tools to protect domestic industries or punish unfair trade practices. They were, in many ways, a smokescreen, a strategic distraction to divert attention from a larger, more complex plan quietly taking shape behind the scenes. What exactly is that plan? And why should you care about it? This story goes beyond tariffs and trade disputes. It's about reshaping global power dynamics, economic dominance, and even the future of American influence on the world stage. Tariffs are visible, immediate, and easy to understand, but real power often operates in subtler ways. When tariffs hit the news, they provoke outrage or support from different groups: manufacturers, farmers, consumers, and politicians. They make good headlines and create clear narratives. Trump fights unfair trade, or Trump's tariffs hurt American consumers. But underneath this surface, the administration's real objectives are less about economic fairness and more about strategic positioning. It's about leveraging tariffs to create leverage in other areas, like technological supremacy, supply chain control, and international alliances. It's about forcing adversaries to the negotiation table from a position of strength, while simultaneously laying groundwork for long-term structural changes that will shape America's competitive edge for decades. What's fascinating is how tariffs fit into a broader strategy that isn't always obvious at first glance. They serve as a bargaining chip in geopolitical games, a way to disrupt global supply chains that have become too dependent on rivals, and a method to encourage investment back into American industries. But the real game goes far beyond economics. It's about securing control over critical technologies like 5G, artificial intelligence, and semiconductors, which are destined to define the next era of global power. It's about ensuring the United States remains the dominant force in innovation and manufacturing, even as countries like China and others aggressively pursue their own ambitions. The tariffs are only the opening act in a much larger drama involving national security, international diplomacy, and the future of global trade architecture. One of the most overlooked aspects is how tariffs influence relationships with allies and competitors alike. While tariffs triggered retaliation from some countries, they also forced a reckoning within traditional alliances, encouraging discussions about fair burden sharing and strategic priorities. By shaking up the status quo, the administration nudged allies to rethink their economic and security commitments. This disruption, uncomfortable as it may have been, was part of a deliberate effort to reset global alignments in favor of American interests. The tariff disputes were a way to rewrite the rules of engagement, ensuring that America's partners and rivals alike understood the stakes involved. At the same time, this approach sparked significant debate within the U.S. itself. Critics argued that tariffs raised costs for consumers and businesses, potentially undermining economic growth. Supporters countered that tough trade measures were necessary to protect jobs and industries threatened by unfair competition. This tug-of-war captured public attention and dominated political discourse, effectively distracting from the more subtle but crucial moves happening behind closed doors. Moves that aim to strengthen domestic manufacturing capabilities, enhance research and development funding, and safeguard critical supply chains from future disruptions. Consider the shift in how the government began to approach technology and innovation policies during this period. The emphasis wasn't just on trade barriers, but on comprehensive strategies to foster American leadership in sectors crucial for national security and economic dominance. Investments in research and development surged, export controls tightened on sensitive technologies, and partnerships with private industry deepened. This holistic approach is rarely highlighted in headlines, but is vital to understanding the true scope of the administration's agenda. The tariffs, in this context, become tactical distractions, visible pressure points that mask a far more strategic transformation underway. Now, let's think about how all of this impacts